about the achievement drive, that need to achieve and exceed goals. We measure that drive on the E3. In fact, it's the very first scale on the E3 because it's so important in the workplace. So, work ethic, if somebody doesn't have that drive and work ethic to achieve, to hit or exceed goals, then they're probably not going to go very far in the workplace or probably anything else if they really want to be good at something. Now, I was very fortunate. I'm not sure I recognized it as fortunate at the time, but early in my career, and I'm maybe 27 years old, I worked with hospice and I worked with dying people every day. Now, that's pretty intense for anybody at any age, but particularly intense for a young man who was just as virile, competitive, and go as I was, right? And many of them, not all of them, but many of them had regrets. And I mean big regrets that they can't come back from. And most of the time, those regrets centered on their achievement drive and that desire to place goals and accomplishment above and at the expense of relationships. And was an old standing comment in when I came up in psychology, but I still think it's great. We are human beings, but we don't act like human beings. We act like human doings, and we are part of nature. We're not separated from it. We might think we are, but we're not. We're composed of the elements of the earth element, the water element making up about 70% of our body, the fire element. If we didn't have the fire element in us, we would not have a 98.6-degree temperature. The air element, the wind element. If we don't have the wind element, we're not breathing. You take away that element and you're gone the fastest. Had a funny argument with a friend of mine who said the water element was most important, and I put my hand over his mouth and nose. It was a pretty effective way for him to see that I could go longer without water. I love some of those direct methods sometimes too, and listen to change in opinions and such. That was a good one, right? So everything else in nature, the bears, the plants, the trees, the flowers, seems to me, having spent quite a bit of time in wild nature, that they're all going about being, and doing is a byproduct of their being. But I seriously doubt the bear's trying to outcompete the other bear family. Doesn't seem like they're doing much of that. That the iris is trying to compete with the rose. No, the iris is beautiful because the iris is simply being. And yet in our culture, that's not really celebrated. That gets titles like lazy, complacent, procrastinator, sloth, whatever. Poor sloths, right? They get a bad rap, and they're experts at this relaxation thing, and they're not all stressed out of stressing balls and blowing out ACLs. They're not doing that ever. So, yeah, so there will come a point where we will no longer be able to achieve, and our bodies will not be able to perform at the levels they were able to previously perform. We will age, we will get sick, and we will die. These are facts. So because of that time with hospice, it really shifted my entire approach to life, quite frankly. And it very quickly became this sort of work-life integration where there was always as much time with either family or friends, or work trips were also vacations, and just kind of integrating that thing. And I think it's kind of funny now that that's become this trend of work-life integration. But man, if you're just about the goal and the accomplishment and the outcome, there's a high likelihood that at some point in your life, you are going to be miserable and have pretty intense regrets. So again, I don't know the answer to these or many other things, but it's a worthwhile contemplation that people at the end of their lives, a majority have regrets, and they're in this one primary category. I think it's wise to pay attention to that. It just seems wise to pay attention to that and make certain adjustments. So yeah, that the very thing we hire and celebrate for work ethic, achievement, goal orientation very much becomes an overused strength and can create all sorts of suffering in others. And if it's crazy level, like you're just going all the time, then your team's trying to compete with that and keep up with it. And now everybody's burnt out and wrecked and overwhelmed and stressed. Well, you really think you're gonna have peak performance when you're in overwhelm, burnout, and stress? Give me a break. You're smarter than that.